Deep inside the YouTube algorithm, there is a dark side of the platform that you were never meant to see. Oh, reach it, you have to piece together hundreds of deleted, fragmented videos that make absolutely no sense on their own. Only then can one find this large-scale, restricted, found footage horror film, Wreck. This movie is quite scary. Because the director does not play by the rules, he does not give actors scripts or lines. Instead, he makes them improvise on the spot, and if they do not perform well, they are dismissed immediately. This ensures every minute makes the audience scream with terror. One never knows what will happen the next second. The story happens to a female reporter named Angela. On this day, she and Pablo, the cameraman, arrive at a fire station. They interview a firefighter about his daily life and routine. But what truly captures attention is firefighters performing missions and extinguishing fires. It would be even better if they could film some bizarre scenes. Angela was originally worried about this, but unexpectedly, soon after, the team receives an emergency call. Angela immediately senses an opportunity. Angela eagerly takes Pablo, the cameraman, to the car. Since this is not a serious fire nor a large-scale operation, the firefighters only send 2 team members, namely Chris and Arno. Their mission this time is to help a lonely old woman escape from her apartment. So they specifically prepare some lockpicking tools. However, when the 3 arrive at the apartment, they find a police car that has been parked at the entrance for a long time. The apartment is already surrounded by residents. The scene is bustling with noise and chaotic. Everyone's heart is filled with panic and worry. According to a mother, the lonely old woman seems to have gone mad. She has been hearing her scream and yell since last night. The sound does not seem human, but rather like the howl of some beast. The woman's description casts a veil over this incident, making it even more mysterious. Residents eagerly discuss the matter, and their panic unconsciously turns into fear. At this moment, the police finally come down. They bring 2 firefighters to the old woman's home. Arno immediately picks up the lock-picking tools and soon opens the old woman's door. The strange old woman stands at the other end of the room. Her face is pale and her behavior is strange. Everyone shouts for a while before the old woman finally reacts. The police officer carefully walks over, wanting to send her to the hospital. Because it is too dark around, Pablo the cameraman suddenly turns on the light. This action directly startles the old woman into a daze. Everyone uses the light and finally sees her disheveled and strange appearance, as if someone splashed blood on her. The police officer realizes something is wrong and immediately calls for an ambulance. But just as he communicates with his colleague, a strange scene occurs. The old woman, who was originally expressionless, suddenly screams. The police officer guesses she must be startled and quickly tells others to stay away from the old woman. But before he finishes speaking, the old woman screams strangely again and bites the police officer like crazy. The harder they pull, the harder the old woman bites. Under the police officer's heartbreaking screams, the old woman directly tears off the flesh from his neck. Blood gushes out. The scene is unbearable. Seeing this, the firefighter quickly runs out with the police officer. The other firefighter, meanwhile, is responsible for dragging the old woman back into the room. The ambulance they previously called also happens to arrive downstairs at this moment. In the chaos, Angela specifically reminds Pablo, the cameraman, to film everything and not miss a single detail. If this airs, it will definitely be big news. However, what everyone does not know is that something significant is also happening downstairs while they struggle with the old woman. The main door is tightly locked. The residents are in a state of panic. Fortunately, an intern doctor promptly treats the police officer's wound. He barely manages to survive. However, this is only temporary. If they do not quickly get him to a hospital, the police officer will likely bleed to death. Unexpectedly, at this very moment, a hoarse voice suddenly echoes through the hallway. Upon hearing this news, the already agitated residents become even more panicked. They scream hysterically, wanting to escape from here. The police try to contact for backup, but the walkie-talkie on the other end is vague, only saying they will contact them promptly if there is a situation. However, there is no further response. Seeing this scene, the residents completely lose their minds. They incessantly question the police officers, asking what is happening and why they are not allowed to leave. As the situation becomes more chaotic, Anno immediately yells, interrupting the conflict. He repeatedly emphasizes to everyone that the top priority is to get the injured out as soon as possible, not to argue senselessly here. Since the main entrance is blocked, they must find another way out. Anno then notices the rolling shutter door behind him. He guesses there might be a back exit, and prepares to force it open with tools. But just as they are about to act, Chris suddenly falls from a high place, crashing heavily onto the ground, bleeding profusely. His handsome face is disfigured, and only a faint pulse remains. Seeing such a terrifying scene, the entire hallway descends into chaos. But something even more terrifying awaits. While treating Chris's wounds, a beastly howl suddenly echoes throughout the entire residential building. It sends shivers down everyone's spines, and they suspect the sound comes from upstairs. The officer immediately calls the man and takes him to investigate. Before going upstairs, he specifically warns everyone not to move if they want to survive. But seeing Pablo constantly filming him up close, as if nothing is wrong, the officer explodes in anger. He furiously knocks the camera away. But Angela would never let go of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Just then, strange noises echo from upstairs again, piquing Angela's curiosity. She plucks up her courage and cautiously walks over, searching for the source of the sound. But when she follows the sound to the old woman's apartment, she finds it eerily quiet, and the strange noises from early. The strange sound also disappears instantly. Looking at the eerie scene, Angela gets a little scared. She dares not walk further, fearing for her life. But Pablo, the cameraman, becomes interested at this moment, disregarding Angela's warnings and continuing to go deeper into the room.
Está muerto.
Señora, estése quieta. Señora.
The old woman is shot dead by the police with 3 shots. The roller shutter door downstairs is also opened at this moment. Logically, the story should end here. Unexpectedly, the horror has just begun. Outside, residents see SW at officers everywhere. They seal off the entire street, trapping everyone inside and refusing to provide any explanation. If anyone tries to cross the line, they immediately use force to suppress them. Additionally, the armed police also tell everyone that the building is currently under a BNC emergency state. They will later send a quarantine officer to inspect the residents in the building. And the so-called BNC. It is a crisis management procedure that the government only activates in the event of biochemical, nuclear radiation, or chemical weapon attacks. Upon hearing this, everyone feels their world collapse. A mother is so terrified that she breaks down on the spot. Her daughter currently has a high fever. If she does not receive timely treatment, she might suffer brain damage from the fever. However, given the situation, everyone can only remain in place and wait patiently. However, during the few minutes of waiting for the inspection, Angela also broadcasts from the scene and interviews the trapped residents, as well as the girls suffering from a high fever. During their conversation, Angela learns that the girl's name is Jennifer. She has a happy family and a gentle dog named Bruce. However, she does not know what happened last night. Her dog Bruce suddenly falls ill. Her father also develops a high fever. Therefore, they are not with Jennifer at this moment but are receiving treatment in different hospitals. Actually, the director already subtly reveals the cause of the incident here. However, due to the urgency of the situation, no one realizes any of this and they foolishly continue to wait for the inspection. Soon after, the epidemic prevention officer finally arrives. He wears a heavy protective suit, completely covering himself, fearing infection from some virus. He first introduces the specific situation to everyone and asks them not to move around randomly. Seeing a camera constantly filming his face, he even forcibly cuts it off, fearing that some secret might be leaked. However, Angela is very dedicated. She thinks why she should stop filming just because he says so, and why she should listen to him. So, while the epidemic prevention officer is not paying attention, she turns on the camera again and has Pablo, the cameraman, secretly climb onto the window, aiming it inside the room. Rough the lens, they vaguely see the epidemic prevention officer handcuffing Chris's hands, then cutting his clothes, injecting an unknown drug into a syringe, and jabbing it into Chris's arm. The epidemic prevention officer just breathes a sigh of relief after the injection, but unexpectedly, the next second, Angela quickly returns to the room. She sees that the situation is already in chaos. Both inside and outside, people are panicking. To prevent even more terrifying things from happening, the epidemic prevention personnel locks the door tightly, leaving the doctor inside to fend for himself. The doctor quickly explains that he was not bitten at all. After hearing this, the epidemic prevention personnel reveals a desperate truth. This virus not only spreads through blood, but saliva can also transmit the infection. Plus, they do not understand the virus sufficiently at this time. If they let the doctor out, everyone will be doomed. While everyone trembles with fear, the room's window suddenly breaks. A bright red bloody handprint, like a sharp knife, makes everyone's spine chill. Their hearts fill with fear. They rush to the main hall, quickly pull down the rolling door, and begin to question the epidemic prevention personnel. Seeing that he can no longer conceal it, the epidemic prevention personnel truthfully explains everything. Just yesterday, a shocking and terrifying incident occurs at a pet hospital in the city. Bruce suddenly goes mad during treatment. He appears to have rabies. However, the symptoms are dozens of times more terrifying than rabies. He bites everything around him like a zombie. He even attacks an old woman who has been dead for 7 days. In the end, more than 10 quarantine officers work together to finally take down Bruce.
Un momento. ¿El perro se llamaba Max?
¿Tiene anginas?
¡Una mierda!
Tranquila, señora. Solo tenemos que asegurarnos. Tranquila. Creemos que el foco de infección puede ser el perro y que se transmite a través de la saliva. Si eso es así...
This news catches everyone off guard. Jennifer screams and runs upstairs. Seeing this, the man quickly uses handcuffs to handcuff Jennifer's mother to the stairs. He then rushes upstairs to look for Jennifer. They know the girl is already infected. If they do not control her in time, the entire building's residents might suffer. But the group searches upstairs for a long time. Not only do they not find Jennifer, but they are also horrified to discover that the old woman they shot down has mysteriously disappeared. The two frantically search everywhere. However, there is only a blood stain in the room. However, in a place they do not notice, the infected Jennifer silently comes to the corridor, staring fixedly at the two like a walking corpse. The police officer cautiously steps forward, comforting Jennifer while taking out the special medicine given by the quarantine officer.
No me pasen los ojos.
Jennifer, who has become a zombie, presses the police officer against the wall, opening her bloodied mouth and brutally tears off one of his ears. The scene is now chaotic, painting a grim picture of survival with blood splattered everywhere. The police officer knows he is already infected, and losing consciousness is only a matter of time. So he quickly picks up the hysterical Jennifer, forcibly drags her to the balcony, and shouts for everyone to leave quickly. But before he can run out of the room, the crazy old woman suddenly appears again. Her mouth emits a scream that sounds inhuman. He is so scared that he immediately grabs a hammer and smashes the old woman's face. Just then, a loud bang seems to come from downstairs. He rushes over, only to find the hall is already in chaos. The doctor who was locked outside is also infected. He rushes out of the rolling door. He desperately pulls the quarantine officer's leg. He refuses to let go no matter what. Fortunately, Anu arrives in time and finally manages to lock the infected person back inside. But after such a commotion, the quarantine officer is also bitten. He sits alone in a corner, barely clinging to life. He knows that once he is bitten, his fate is sealed. So, with the thought of certain death, he locks himself inside the iron cage. Time passes by minute by minute. The smell of blood in the hallway becomes increasingly pungent. People's panic also deepens. Outside, there are armed forces. Inside, there are zombie attacks. They do not know what to do for a while. Are they just waiting for death? Just as Angela shouts about what to do, a roar suddenly comes from behind her. The residents who turned into zombies also rush over directly to eat all of them. Seeing this, Anu immediately raises his fist and delivers a heavy punch to the zombie's forehead. During their escape, the group remembers that a resident once told them that there is a path in the textile shop leading outside, but the key is in the room on the 4th floor. At that time, they find it troublesome and do not go to look for it. Now it seems it is perhaps the only way out, so they quickly rush upstairs. But just as they prepare to move, they are again scared out of their wits by Jennifer's mother's terrifying appearance. They rush upstairs. On the way, they encounter a zombie. He immediately uses a rope to tightly strangle it, but he cannot deal with it alone. Seeing this, Pablo, the cameraman, quickly puts down his camera. Then, with him, they use all their strength to finally subdue the zombie. But the crisis is far from over. As the footsteps of the three become more hurried, the zombies in the corridor are like mad dogs, swarming in a frenzy. He knows that this situation is not a solution, so he has to hold back this group of zombies alone. He lets Angela and the other person go to the room on the 4th floor to look for the key. But when they finally get the key in hand and put it back in its original place, they can no longer find him. Angela anxiously looks down, and oh my goodness, he is right there. He is unfortunately bitten and infected, turning into a ferocious-looking zombie. And it is precisely this glance downwards that completely exposes their location. Accompanied by terrifying, ear-piercing screams, the unconscious zombies also begin to frantically attack upstairs. The two of them desperately run towards the attic. At the very moment the zombies arrive, they open the door with the key. At the moment they close the door, the two finally escape danger. Angela cannot help but let out a laugh of relief after escaping death. But at this moment, the two do not know that the room they are currently in hides a secret even more terrifying than the zombies. And this secret is also the true reason for the horrific incident. The room's walls are covered with photos. The table is also filled with experimental equipment. As a reporter, Angela immediately recognizes the girl in the photos as a missing person reported in the news not long ago. Seeing this, Angela finally realizes the truth. She wonders why the girl was never found. It turns out she was imprisoned here and turned into a living experimental subject. And the dense experimental data is simply horrifying. But what is even more terrifying comes next.
He conseguido aislarla encima. El problema es su inestabilidad. El contacto con el oxígeno la deteriora rápidamente. De todos modos, soy optimista.
It turns out that the most terrifying thing is not the incident itself, but rather that the girl naturally carries a certain virus in her body. The room's owner captures her here to develop a vaccine. However, some accidents seem to occur during the process, leading to the virus not being suppressed. Instead, it begins to spread wildly. Ultimately, Jennifer's dog is likely the first one infected, followed by Jennifer's family and then the crazy old woman, all eventually turning into their current tragic state. This recording makes Angela feel uneasy all over. She now only wants to leave this place as quickly as possible, no longer willing to stay for even 1 minute. However, just as they search for an exit, the ceiling suddenly collapses. An entrance abruptly appears before their eyes. Angela is completely terrified. She no longer feels driven by curiosity. She only wants to survive. But Pablo, the cameraman, becomes excited, disregarding Angela's warnings and insisting on seeing what is inside. He suddenly becomes very proactive. And with that look, the room instantly plunges into complete darkness. Heart-wrenching screams echo incessantly. Pablo, the cameraman, quickly activates his night vision. They then see an even more bizarre scene. A strange, slender, twisted woman appears in the darkness. She slowly walks towards their sound, as if searching for prey. Angela is also terrified by this scene. She tightly covers her mouth and nose, cautiously following Pablo, the cameraman, as he bypasses the monster from behind. But in the end, they are still discovered. During their escape, Pablo, the cameraman, encounters a fatal strike from the monster, silencing the lens forever. Angela has no choice but to hide in a corner, seeking a chance to escape alone. The movie ends here. After watching, the narrator realizes that the true horror of this film is not the virus turning people into monsters, but the moment the iron gate locks. The people outside abandon those inside. The police guard the exit. Officials cut off communication. Survivors tear at each other in the hallway. When order collapses, civilization becomes the thinnest layer of skin, with only instinct underneath. The reporter holds up the camera and asks questions, but no one answers. It's not that they don't want to speak, but they don't know who to trust. In the end, the skeletal figure in the attic lies in the dark. The camera points at it. It looks back at the camera. There is no virus in those eyes, only despair. The film Wreck is never about zombies, but rather how long people can last after being abandoned. Alright, see you next time.